Hi, fourth and seventh period. So Kip's on the bridge and he's trying to figure out a way to maybe get the bridge to collapse or something like that so other people cannot come over it and be affected by the night gardener, because him and Molly are planning to run away and they're hoping they can take the family with them. Kip moved onto the bridge, keeping one hand on the thick rope, looking for weak spots in the wood. It was an ancient structure, and he felt continual surprise that it hadn't fallen into the river ages ago. He hoped this meant that it wouldn't take much to chop it down. The boards were slick with dew and mildew, and he nearly slipped a few times as he hopped from plank to plank. He stopped a few feet from the main road where he thought the bridge might be weakest. He set down his crutch and gingerly got to his knees. The sound of rushing water filled his ears as he leaned over the edge, peering at the beams beneath. Thick black tendrils consumed the undercarriage. The roots extended all the way from the island and ended just before the road. "So that's why the bridge ain't fallen down," he muttered, almost impressed. "The tree don't want it to." Kip stared at the roots, something else sticking in his mind. He remembered their flight in the wagon. The night gardener had chased them to the end of the bridge and then stopped at this very spot, as if pulled backward by some outside force. He remembered that night he was spared in the garden, when the same thing happened. "Of course," he said, sitting up. "We can only go as far as the roots." "He can only go as far as the roots." "Who can?" said a voice in his ear. Kip turned around to see Alistair standing a little bit behind him. The sound of the river must have covered his approach. His face was as pale as ever, but there was a red puffiness around his eyes that made it look as if he'd been crying. He was holding Kip's crutch in two hands like a broadsword. Kip slowly pulled himself to his feet. "Good morning," he said, trying to keep his voice casual. I hardly call it morning. It's nearly lunch." Alistair waved the crutch like a magic wand. "Where were you?" It took everything in Kip not to grab for the crutch. If Alistair knew he was bothered, then things would only get worse. He clenched his fist tight, trying not to let his irritation show. We went for a drive." "A drive?" Alistair's expression soured. "My mother's sick and you were off on a drive?" He wagged the crutch like an accusing finger. "I can tell you're lying. You've done something rotten. The doctor's missing. Father's having a right row. I'm going to tell him it's you two that frightened him off." "He was frightened all right, but it wasn't us that done it." Kip looked behind Alistair. In the middle of the lawn he could see the shape of the fallen stable door, but no sign of the doctor beneath it. "You do know something. I'll have you sacked." Kip could not hide the smile that crept up on his mouth. "Won't do much good, 'cause we quit." Alistair stepped back like he had been struck. "You what?" "Molly's in there right now telling your father we're running away, and if you was half as smart as you pretend to be, you'd do the same." Alistair put the crutch over his shoulder, gripping it like a mallet. "And why is that?" Kip bit his lip. "I know you think that tree's a good thing, but it ain't." Alistair's face tensed. "You don't know anything about that tree." Kip hopped closer. "I know it put your father in debt with those men from town. I know it made your ma sick." He could not resist himself. "I know it made you fat." Alistair narrowed his eyes. He raised the crutch above Kip's head. For a moment Kip thought he was going to strike him, but then Alistair swung his arm out to the side, letting the crutch dangle over the edge of the bridge. "Say that again." Kip hopped closer, feeling a clutch of panic. "Please don't. I'm sorry." Alistair opened his hand, and the crutch fell from his grasp. "Oops!" Kip heard a splash in the river below. His heart plunged with it. He stumbled past Alistair, who was laughing, and peered over the edge. Courage was gone. Alistair moved behind him. "Good luck running away now," he said, the words with a mocking brogue. Kip teetered to one side, his stomach reeling. That crutch was the only thing he still had from his dad, and now it was gone. He closed his eyes, forcing back tears. He could not let Alistair see him cry. He breathed slowly through clenched teeth. "That was a horrible thing you done." Alistair crossed his arms. "Are you going to hit me? Tell me you hate me?" Kip gripped the edge of the bridge, his body trembling with rage and shame. I don't hate you. He pulled himself upright and hopped toward Alistair on his one good leg. I feel sorry for you. Alistair responded as though he'd been struck. Why do people keep saying that? He said quietly. Kip hopped closer still. 'Cause it's true. The pain was excruciating, but he kept his gaze steady. He wasn't looking just at Alistair, but at every boy who had ever taunted and chased him, and he was determined not to let them win. Your ma's inside the house, halfway to dead, and that's a painful thing. But worse, she'll go to her grave thinking she's mother to a selfish, mean-headed bully who never did a good thing for no one, and she'll be right. The little color had drained from Alistair's face. His jaw was set and trembling. Kip thought Alistair might shove him or swear or even throw him off the bridge, but he didn't care. He turned around and, wincing with every step, headed out of the lawn. Alistair did not come after him. When Kip reached the stables, he glanced back toward the bridge. Alistair was still there, watching him. Chapter 43, Body of Evidence. Before Molly talked to Master Windsor, there was one thing she wanted to do. She crept downstairs to her old bedroom and closed the door behind her. It had been less than a week since she had last been inside this room, and yet it appeared to her a foreign place. She looked at the ugly black roots pushing through the ceiling and walls and shuddered, thinking of how she had once slept soundly in that bed. Not too soundly, she reminded herself. She walked to the wardrobe and opened the doors. Below empty pegs sat the old sea chest she had brought with her from home. She raised the lid with her foot, as one might lift a rock with a snake underneath. The trunk was now empty, save the small bundle of letters from her parents. Just seeing them made her heart beat faster. She did not have an exact plan as to what to do with the letters, but she knew she couldn't leave them in the house. The idea of some other person coming upon them and reading them was too much to bear. She knelt and picked up the letters, and even now, even knowing that they were not real, she felt a longing to read them one last time. She held the envelope to her nose, savoring the saltwater air. Her parents may have been gone, but a part of them still lived inside the letters, their voices woven into each word. She stuffed the envelopes into her pocket and went upstairs to find Master Windsor. Bertrand was, as she expected, sitting vigil at his wife's bedside. Since the collapse, he had spent hours this way, clutching Constance's hand, quietly reciting stories of their early marriage, courtship follies and wedding day jitters, and the thrill of early parenthood. Molly noticed that when he told these stories, when he was dwelling on the happier past, he did not seem to stutter as much. Master Windsor, Molly said softly. If she startled him, he did not show it. The prodigal maid returns. He spoke without looking up. I feared you'd run off with the doctor. His voice had the drained quality of someone too exhausted to fight. Molly shifted her weight. She wished she had more time to think about what to say. The fact is, sir, my brother and me cannot work here no more. I think you know why. I've come for our things, and we're moving on. His face twitched. You're leaving us? This house is a bad place, sir. Having grown up here, you know, better than anyone. She gave him a meaningful look. You can't quit. He stood, pushing his chair back from the bed. My family needs you. It's already done, sir, and it's for your family that I'm up here, talking to you now. She took a step closer, fixing her eyes on his. You should come with us, all of you, tonight. Impossible. He paced in front of her. Connie is ill. My associates are coming tomorrow, and I still cannot pay them. So leave before they get here. You're not listening, he snapped. I need to stay here with the tree. If I can just get enough from it. He held up the key to the green door, clutching it in his hand. Molly could see that Master Windsor was deaf to mere arguments. He needed proof. She rushed forward and snatched the key from his grasp. Give that back! Molly was already halfway down the hallway. You'll get it back, sir, but before you do, there's something you need to see. She marched downstairs, a protesting Master Windsor in tow. Kip was waiting for them outside, rake in hand, standing next to a pile of leaves. He was balanced on his right leg, and Molly wondered why he wasn't using his crutch. Did you find him? She said. Aye, Kip hopped back, revealing the cleared grave. But it ain't pretty. Molly led Master Windsor to the edge of the hole, which was no longer empty. Dr. Crouch's corpse lay crammed into the narrow trench. His face was bloodless, his eyes wide open, in a look of abject terror. A mesh of thin roots covered his entire body, swallowing him. Good heavens! Bertrand looked like he might be sick. Molly knew better than to prod him or speak in any way. She waited. After a long moment, he turned to her. Did he suffer? It was fast. He didn't even have time to call out. You should thank him, Kip said. That grave was meant for you. Molly shot her brother a look. This was no time for malice. She took a step closer to Master Windsor, meeting his eye. The doctor was murdered, sir, in cold blood, and I think you know what it was that done it. Okay, do you think they're going to leave? What are you predicting right now? I hope you have a good day, and hopefully I'll be back tomorrow. I've been forgetting to read, so hopefully I'll be back tomorrow. See ya.